As we continue on with this NBA Draft Big Board series, we now shift our focus over to the small forward position, which is probably the strongest position in the whole class top to bottom. As I have with the last two videos ranking the point guards and the shooting guards, which will be linked in the description below if you haven't seen them already, we'll be counting down from 10 to 1, working our way towards the best player. Before we start though, make sure to subscribe to the channel as there is still plenty more content on the way very soon. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting at number 10 on this list, we have Admiral Schofield out of Tennessee. By taking one look at Schofield, you would assume that he would be someone that dominated the football field, but instead, he's a force to be reckoned with on the basketball court. He's one of the strongest players in the entire draft class at any position, and uses that to his advantage by dominating down low both in the post and by attacking the basket. The strength also translates to the defensive end of the floor, allowing him to also hold his own against power forwards and even some undersized centers. The issue with him as a prospect, though, is that he himself is slightly undersized for the position at 6'5", and he's kind of slow for a wing player. He has a big man's game in a guard's body, which comes with both positives and negatives. His best case scenario is most likely going to be a second round pick and then showing a team that he's an incredible hard worker and capable of working himself into a rotation on the bench. Next up at number 9 on this list is Dylan Windler out of Belmont. Windler is one of the most slept on prospects in the entire class, mostly because he was virtually an unknown all season long until March Madness, and it doesn't even feel like many people took note of his incredible March performance. First of all, he's up there with the very best of them when it comes to perimeter shooting in this draft class, and not just spotting up either. He's an incredibly underrated shot creator off the dribble, and as a scorer in general, he's very multifaceted. He shot 54% from the field and 43% from 3 in college, while averaging 21 points per game, which is absolutely phenomenal, and the production held up in March when he dropped 35 points in Belmont's only game. On top of that, he's 6'8", which is great size for a wing player, but the troubles he will run into are on the defensive end of the floor because he's fairly thin and not the quickest. He's going to need to bulk up to defend other NBA small forwards, but he has a very good chance of making a team's rotation as a secondary playmaker off the bench. Up next at number 8 on this list is Talen Horton-Tucker out of Iowa State. This guy might be the biggest marvel of a prospect in the entire draft because there are so many qualities he carries that just leave you asking yourself how. He's only 6'4", which might seem slightly undersized for the position, but then you realize he has a 7'1" wingspan, which is just out of this world ridiculous, and as an NBA player, that would already be the second biggest increase from height to wingspan. On top of that, he weighs 235 pounds, which would make him the shortest player in the league to weigh that much. And if you thought that was all of the jaw-dropping attributes he possessed, then you'd be wrong, because he's the youngest player in the draft coming out of college, being still only 18 years old, and he doesn't even turn 19 until November. When it comes to his game, he projects as a very good defender, but his offensive game is still fairly raw given his youth. Any team that drafts him will need patience because it will probably take him a few years to be a productive NBA player, but a few years down the line, he has a chance to blossom into something special. Next up at number 7 on this list is Cam Johnson out of UNC. In this class, there are several tremendous shooting talents, as I am sure you've heard me say about a few other prospects before, but Cam is in serious contention of being the best shooter in the draft. He shot about 46% from 3 last year, while taking 6 attempts per game, providing the volume and efficiency needed to prove himself as a marksman. He's also 6'9", giving him great height for a wing player, which will help him get shots off over opposing defenders contesting his shot. With his skill set, he's more of a specialist than an overall talent, but playoff teams picking at the end of the first round often look for players like this to add to their bench to play a role. As a projection, expect him to play a similar kind of role Landry Shamet played last season for the Clippers and Sixers, except for Johnson, he has 4 inches on Shamet. Next up at number 6 on this list is Okpala out of Stanford. Okpala has all the physical tools NBA teams want from a wing player, being 6'8" and 210 pounds, with a 7'2" wingspan, and I can see him becoming a solid 3-and-D player down the line. His agility combined with his length make him a promising defensive talent, and his jumper is fairly reliable as is already. However, he's not just a shooter, as he actually prefers to attack the rim and use his physicality to get buckets in the paint, giving him a nice overall offensive game that'll keep defenses guessing. He definitely isn't fully polished on offense, but he's shown some good signs for the future improvement down the road, and I believe he's firmly labeled as first-round talent this year. Up next at number 5 on this list is Nassir Little out of UNC. Little is now the second North Carolina player on this list, and despite being a bench player basically all season, he does come in higher than his former teammate Cam Johnson. Little was extremely hyped up before the college basketball season started, with some thinking he had a chance to become the top pick in the draft, but that didn't really happen. Little is an extremely raw talent that still has a ways to go before he puts it all together and becomes an actually good basketball player. But when it comes to his physical attributes, he has scouts drooling. He's 6'7" with a 7'2" wingspan, has great speed and lateral quickness, and is capable of leaping out of the gym. For most of his life, he was able to get by on that alone, but when he got to UNC, it quickly became realized that he doesn't quite have the understanding of the little things on defense or the polish in his offensive game to produce. He's very much a project, and a team in the lottery will likely take a chance on him because of his very promising upside, but there is also some bust potential there as well. Up next at number 4 on this list is Sekou Doumbouya from the French League. Having just discussed a player whose skills are still very raw and overall will probably be a project for a few years, we now have another one, only Doumbouya's upside, in my opinion, can be even higher. At 6'9", he's very Giannis-esque from back when Giannis Antetokounmpo was a draft prospect with his lanky body, long arms, quickness for his size, and overall raw skill set. By no means am I saying that Sekou is the next Giannis or will come anywhere close to being as good as Giannis currently is, just that there are some similarities. Sekou is already a problem in transition, and once he builds a head of steam, he's tough to stop from getting to the rim. His jump shot still needs work though, and his overall understanding of the game isn't quite up to par with other players in the draft. Again, he's very boom or bust, and whoever takes him will need a lot of patience with his growth. Next up at number 3 on this list is Cam Reddish out of Duke. From Duke's supposed big 3 of freshmen this season, Reddish was definitely the forgotten man of the bunch, but that wasn't by accident. This season went just about as poorly as possible for him from the jump, and while some people will be convinced it was because he didn't get enough touches, I'm a lot more skeptical. Reddish was supposed to be not only one of the best shooters on the team, but in the draft in general, yet his 3-point shot was never even remotely consistent at any point this year. On top of that, he was also one of the statistically worst finishers in the paint in all of college basketball on his volume, which is very worrisome. In my personal opinion, I really don't see the all-star potential others see in him at all, but I can't deny the fact that he has a lot of untapped potential. Obviously, because he's this high on this list, I don't hate him as a prospect, but I would see it as a reach if he was taken in the top 5. Next up at number 2 on this list is DeAndre Hunter out of Virginia. Almost being on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Hunter is one of my very favorite players in the draft this year, and I believe he has a chance to be one of the very best 3-and-D players in the whole league when he hits his prime. He's easily the best perimeter defender in the class, and might even be the best defensive player period, and he showed this off in the national championship when he completely clamped up Jarrett Culver, who is also a projected top 5 pick this year. On top of that, he also shot 44% from 3 last year. He's the kind of player that any team looking to seriously contend needs on their team, because while not everyone can be a star, teams still need high-level role players that buy into their roles and produce, and that's exactly what Hunter could be. Finally, coming in at number 1 on this list, we have RJ Barrett out of Duke. Barrett may not necessarily be a fan favorite on social media because many see him as a low IQ offensive player with bad shot selection, and while that may be true to a degree, I feel like the rest of his game that he excels at gets grossly overlooked. Barrett is strong, quick, and crafty, and is a very good player at getting to his spots and finishing through contact. He's also a terrific playmaker for a wing player, and could probably run an NBA offense, assuming he'll be provided with more spacing than he did at Duke. He also competes incredibly hard on the defensive end, and can guard positions 1 through 4 at a high level. Overall, he's an incredibly promising player with all-star potential, and while sometimes he tries to play hero ball and take bad shots, he's still very well-rounded elsewhere. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more prospect rankings coming very soon, with the power forwards being up next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.